Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We're doing a quick Project Online general tips and tricks session today. We'll be covering some of the basics of using Project Online, get you familiar with some of the navigation, some of the ideas of what you can do with the system. My expectation is that people are going to be coming from multiple different points of view here. Some of the folks will probably have had some chance to use Project Online previously. Some of you may have just acquired the system and are starting to try and figure out what you could do with it. And then, of course, there's going to be a group of people who, are just curious because you've never necessarily seen Project Online. We'll respect all those points of view. This is going to be a very high-level session, so there shouldn't be anything that really loses anyone. But some of the topics may or may not make as much sense depending on your past familiarity with Project Online and Project Server and Project on the Desktop, etc. My name is John Michael Scott. I am the CEO of greendata.io. Our business is really trying to help organizations be successful with having better project management process and integrating that with tools in order to be able to provide the kind of leadership dashboarding and reporting that everybody needs in order to make good decisions or back up and support your projects. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and kill the video, and I'm going to switch over to screen so you guys can see what I see on my screen. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to maximize the view of Project Online just to get us a little bit of familiarity here before we dig into some of the things that we're going to cover today. Project Online is Microsoft's offering to enable project managers to engage in a collaborative project management experience. As everyone who has used Project on the Desktop may be familiar, Project on the Desktop is great, but you definitely have some challenges when you're trying to share and get updates from people, when you're trying to communicate and provide leadership with high-level summaries of what's going on in projects. So Project Online was introduced back around 2002 and has been progressing ever since. Today, it's a pretty solid product that a lot of people who are using Project from Microsoft have started to adapt to and adopt in their organizations. The first thing you're going to see on your screen here is just the main landing page of Project Online. And you can see that there is a top ribbon concept. The ribbon is similar to what you would see in Project Desktop. You're going to see that there's always some kind of a title to the page that you happen to be on. There's the body section of the page containing a series of different web parts. Project Online is based on SharePoint. So if you're familiar with SharePoint Online or SharePoint on-premise, you'll be familiar with some of the user experience and interface designs that you're seeing here. Across on the upper right corner, you'll see that I am logged in as a fictitious person by the name of Steve Masters. And so our top bar here gives us access to our account. It also gives us access, if you were, for instance, configuring the application, gives us access to the main areas that we might configure, whether it's the SharePoint experience that you see or whether it's the project management components within Project Online. Across on the far left, we can see which application we're currently connected to, and you'll see to some degree the familiar waffle if you have been using Office 365. That'll be in the upper left corner. And finally, on the left-hand side here, our left navigation is specific to Project Online and is showing us the different areas within Project Online that we may be interacting with. Okay, so that's a pretty quick summary in regard to navigation. The session is being recorded, of course, so you'll be able to reference back to this session later if you need to. If I've gone too quickly over anything or something doesn't make sense, you want to look back at it, we'll make sure to send out the recording links for everyone. Okay, so the first thing on the top of our list is how do we connect Project Professional to Project Online? Well, there's two real answers to that. One answer is the slightly slightly easier way, and one answer is slightly more complicated. The easiest way to connect to Project Online the very first time with Project Professional on your desktop, or Project Online Desktop as it's called today, is to actually click on this icon from within the Project Center. So as long as there's at least one project in Project Online that you can see, you will see an icon and it will reference that this is an enterprise project. You can open your project for editing in Project Professional. So what's convenient about this is if you click on this link, and let's make sure project's not open for a second here. Okay, if you click on this link, what it'll attempt to do is it will actually make a call to the browser to say, hey, I want to open an application. And you can see that it's trying to open up project, and you can see what site is trying to make that opening. Because I waited too long, it is a little annoyed with me, so it's going to present this action not available. I'll just go ahead and cancel, close that, and click it again. But if I am not waiting too long, it won't time out, and it will ask me, do you want to open this file? And I can say yes. Cool. So if I do that, it will actually automatically set up the connection string, or the connection settings, between Project Online Desktop, which we're in right now, very familiar for everybody who's used Project Standard or Project Professional over the years. Or alternatively, if we don't want to do it that way, we can also manually set up the connection as well. And I'll show you how to do that really quickly. So I'll go ahead and discard this, this project, and I'll go directly to Project Online Desktop. So if I'm going to connect to Project Online Desktop, I'm going to start out by working offline. If this happens to come up, the normal operating behavior of the system is that it will just come up in offline mode if you have not previously created any connections to anything. So we would see something like this. And in order to see the left-hand navigation link that I need in order to set up the connection string, I actually have to open a blank project at a minimum. Once I've done that, then I can go to File, and I can see the Info menu item. The Info menu item is where we have this piece that says Manage Accounts. Cool. So if we click Manage Accounts, we can go into a configuration dialog box here, and we can add an account. Now in this case, I've already added the account, but I'm just going to make a similar representation of it for purposes of the this recording. So we specify the link. Now I happen to know it offhand, but since not everybody just randomly happens to know the URL that they have to specify, we'll go ahead and grab that from the top of our screen here. So if I would normally receive this link from my IT professionals, but in any case, the link would be something that looks very much like this: PPM demo, or California DMV, or greendata.io.sharepoint.com/sites/something, health, EPM prod, PWA. It'll have some kind of an identifier for the specific Project Online site that you're connecting to. So we grab that. We go back to our Project Online setup, and you should see that it looks pretty much the same as what I had already typed, but I will paste it in just to be 100% sure. That looks good. I'm going to set that as the default account. And then we go into this topic of working online versus working offline. So you'll notice that there's this opportunity when starting to just use my default account, which most people would probably end up doing, or to choose an account. If we choose an account, then we're going to see a pop-up box, and it's going to allow us to choose to work offline or connect, to the computer, desktop, or connect to your various different instances. Cool. So once that's set, we can close out of Project Desktop, open it again. We will see that we have this drop down. Because I selected Demo Health 2 as my default, we see it automatically loaded here, and I can hit OK. And I'm now connected to the instance. What that means is that if I click Open, I will see Project Web App. So I'll see my connection to Project Online here, Demo Health 2, and I'll be able to browse. And similar to browsing on your desktop for files, you'll be able to browse a list of the projects that are on the system. So that's a really quick take on going through and connecting to Project Online from Project Professional. Now we're going to do something else. We're going to import a project. Okay, so I've set aside and we're already connected to the system, so that's a good start. I've set aside a project on my desktop that is waiting for me to import. It's called EMR Update R3. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Now, the import process for Project Desktop to Project Online, it's not completely convoluted. There is a wizard. It's not bad. It just takes a little getting used to, and we're not going to, go crazy here with trying to explain every single piece of it, but we'll try and knock this out pretty quickly. So first things first, we're going to do save as, because we have a offline project and we want to save it to the online system to import it. And we're going to use the import wizard, so we can check that box. To get, to go to where we are, we just did, file, and that brought us to this backstage experience. We click save as, and we can see the instance that we're going to save against. Once we've checked the import wizard box, we can go ahead and hit save. What this will do is it will take us through a little wizard over here off to the left, which allows us to take care of a few cleanup and organization steps for posting our project online. First things first, it's of course very likely that we have some named resources that we have tied up against the tasks in our project. So we want any of those resources to, instead of being local, meaning a resource that's just within our offline project, we want them to be connected to our online resource pool. The reason we care about this is that this starts to give us some of the collaborative power of Project Online. For instance, we get to know whether Harvey or Tyler are busy on other projects besides our project. The only way we can get there is by making a connection and substituting in the enterprise resources in place of the offline or local resources. So we'll go ahead and do that really quick here. You see that there's an opportunity to map resources, and we see, conveniently for me, all the names are exactly matching. Now, obviously I did that on purpose. So I see that I have a local resource called Anne Gray, a local resource called Arturo Becker, and it will list in your project the entire set of resources that you have ever put into your resource sheet in your desktop copy of project. So here we go. I want to map Anne Gray to the enterprise. I want to map Arturo Becker. Because it recognized everybody, it made this pretty simple for me. It asked me the question, do I want to map to enterprise? It substituted yes for every single answer. And really, I have almost nothing to do here. If, on the other hand, Anne Gray was spelled differently, like Anne space Aveline space Gray, and maybe it couldn't directly recognize the enterprise resource name versus the local resource name, you can explicitly map individual resources. So you can actually click on the drop down, go through the list of resources that are available in the system, and map them out. Okay, let's say we're done with that. That takes us through the first step. Great, we can go to step 2. Right now we want to do a quick validation, and we don't see any errors. There's no issues. Everybody has been matched up, so it has performed that validation against the resources we want to import. We'll continue to step 3. Step 3 is to map any task custom fields. When do people use task custom fields? Well, people use task custom fields when they want to provide additional metadata about each task. Great example of this, some organizations establish a project health check, which is a set of custom fields sitting in their project schedule that show them whether they are, over allocating resources, or whether they have tasks that don't make sense, or whether they've failed to baseline their project. All these kinds of ideas we can put into custom fields. Okay, so if we've been working offline the whole time, we most likely have a set of custom fields in our actual offline project. So this gives us an opportunity to map the contents. Normally, this would mean that you had worked with your project administrator and you had set up matching fields so that that mapping could take place. Fairly typically, the mapping would be like field to like field. So if I'm looking for some kind of a baseline, well, that's going to be some kind of a formula that figures out whether a baseline's been set. So you get the basic idea. In this case, we don't have anything we want to go ahead and map, so I'll go ahead and continue to step 4. It's checking to make sure that it is recognizing all the tasks that we have in the schedule. It's confirming with us that there are 10 tasks and it didn't find any errors. If you did see any errors, we would see them in this box and we would have the opportunity to fix things and address them before we actually finish the import process. We want to get it all right before we publish to the server. Okay, so it looks like everything's good. The last step in my progression for importing is to go ahead and save the project. It's going to ask us for a name on the server. So I'm going to name this the same thing, EMR update R3. And this is actually taking us into our next step of saving and publishing schedules online. So we're going to save it as a project. Your options are project or a template if you were creating a template for everybody else to use. We're going to use the standard calendar. So calendars can be set up in order to account for resource time that's different, like somebody who works 24-hour schedule in shifts, or somebody who works a late shift, or non-standard times from the standpoint of different countries, etc. This also gives us the opportunity to fill in any blanks as far as any custom fields that are about the project level as opposed to the detailed task level. So in our system, we may have budget fields or other things that we want to account for. But let's say that we're all set. We're going to save our project. This then has done some interesting things. First thing it's done is it's said, well, Harvey Day and or Tyler Nulls appear to have some over allocations, and I can do something about that. I can look at the task inspector, reschedule to available dates. I can actually cause my schedule to account for things that are now known about these resources from the server. So pretty cool. Okay, let's go ahead and close our import and we'll accept things as they are. And I'm going to do the final step after saving, which is to make sure to publish my project. What's the difference? Why do I have to save and publish? Well, the idea here is that if you save a project, you can just save your version of the world, and you can then make iterations and updates, what if modeling, do whatever you need to do before you publish the master version of your project for the rest of the world to see. So published projects are the ones that people can see through the online web experience, versus saved projects are just things that the project owner can see. Okay, so we saved it when we first imported. So we'll go ahead and now publish in order to make this project be visible online, and we'll move on to the online interface. You'll also notice that because of the way things are set up and integrated with SharePoint, I can also create a SharePoint site associated with this project, and I will go ahead and let that go as is. You'll also see that every time I save or publish things, at the bottom of the screen, there's going to be a signifier to let us know that something is in progress and partially complete, mostly complete, completely complete, etc. Takes a few seconds depending on what action you perform, because I told it to go deal with the creation of a project site. It'll probably take a little bit of extra time as it waits for that to be completed. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and move on to the online interface, and we'll start figuring some more things out, like how do we create a simple schedule from the online interface? Okay, this is going to be pretty quick here. We're going to create a brand new enterprise project from the online interface instead of from the desktop. It's going to present us some basic information and questions that it wants to know about. So I'm going to call this EMR BI. I'm going to say that the start date of this project is out on the 23rd of November, because we always want to do things right before Thanksgiving, so it should be fun. We'll specify if it's part of a particular portfolio, so product innovation, and we're going to go ahead and accept everything else blank as is. You can click finish. It will now create a brand new project online, and we'll specify Steve Masters, our demo user, as the owner of this project. It will set the start date. and we will be taken into the details of the project. So you can see really at a glance here that this project has a workflow tied to it. We won't talk about that today. It has some project detail pages where we can get business case types of information or any other metadata that we're trying to keep track of. But most importantly, it has a schedule attached to it. And so I can start using the online interface to flesh out my tasks. I could, maybe introduce an SDLC where we're going to do analysis, design, planning, build out, testing. And I can do that really quick. And I can also start inserting subtasks. And I'm just going to make my life a little easier here by, whoops, lost that one, moved it around. I'm going to copy and paste these just to get this to happen a little faster for everybody. We'll go ahead and correct some things here. And you see that it's pretty close. It's not perfectly the same as using the desktop, but a lot of the experience is pretty similar, especially as you're doing essentials of work breakdown structure, adding resources, things like that. So that gives us a basic idea of how to create a simple schedule from the online interface. Now let's go ahead and save this, and we will publish it as well. And then I'm going to staff it. So we've talked a little bit about enterprise resources. While all of that, so publishing happened pretty quick here because we had a pretty simple schedule. We've talked a bit about online resources or enterprise resources. The enterprise resources are accessible both from the online experience and from the desktop. The experience is a bit different in the sense that we have a dialog box that pops up on the screen in Project Desktop, whereas here we have a web view. But the basic idea is you can select and choose the resources you want to add to your project. You can also substitute them in if you're using generic resources. So that happens a lot when people are creating consistent templates. They'll create a set of generic resources against a series of tasks. You can go ahead and replace generic resources with named resources. And this is, gets you through sort of the basics of how do I add people to my project. Once I have saved and closed, it'll take us back to the schedule. And now those resources that I've just added should be visible here. So I can add Brian, add Charlie, add Natalie to different tasks that I have on my schedule. Now, it is going to add them as 100% allocated. So that's notable. That is one difference that you should pay attention to when staffing a project from the online experience versus staffing it from the desktop experience, where you can be more specific. You can say, I only want this person 10% of the time or 30% of the time. Okay. So I'll go ahead and do one more publish. If I just do publish, it will actually save the project at the same time. So in the case where you don't need to do what if modeling or anything like that, we can go ahead and do that as a single action. I'll go ahead and close the project. I'm going to check it in. The concept of check-in is make it available so other project managers could open it and edit it, or my boss could open it, edit it, etc. Okay, we're going to jump really fast into now the resource center so that we can look at the concept of trying to understand staffing models. I'm going to just make sure I select, let's see, I'm going to clear all, and I'm going to select a couple of folks from the system support services, and we'll try and get a little bit of an idea as to how people's utilization is looking. So in Project Online, besides having this area for projects where we can see the list of all the projects that are available, we also have an area where we can see the enterprise resource pool and see what their availability is. You'll see that the left-hand navigation has multiple other centers. We won't cover all those today, but we welcome you guys to all join us again for additional deep dives into other areas of the product as well. But for our case, we're going to look at the capacity planning, which is in the top ribbon. And our capacity planning then takes all of the project data from all the different projects that people are assigned to and munges it together so that we can see, compared to availability, how people's utilization really looks. Like in the case of Danny Franklin, he's definitely over allocated for September and October. And we can get a kind of a view of that also from looking at the individual months across our chart here. So that's a quick and dirty view of how we can get some of the resource capacity and utilization information in the Resource Center. Now, last but not least, we're going to jump really quick into how do we create connected reports from Power BI. So Power BI came along into the world of project back in about 2016 is when it really started to take off, and it has grown by leaps and bounds. Power BI is a pretty easy to use platform for building reports and visualizations, and it allows a couple useful things. First of all, besides the fact that I can, certainly connect directly to project, it actually has an enormous number of different connectors to different databases and online systems. It also accepts and adheres to the OData standard. So there's a standard method for getting data feeds called OData, and we actually use that one here with project in order to make our connection. So you basically put in the URL for the the project instance that you're trying to connect to. So that would be like ppm demo.sharepoint.com/site/health. And then you have to know exactly what the endpoint is to get access to that data feed. But once you've done all that, then it takes you to a pane where you can make a connection with your credentials if you've not already done so. In my case, I've already made a connection, so it took me directly to the data sets that I have available. Okay, so once we have connected to a data set, then we can literally start dragging and dropping things onto our surface here. And it will attempt in Power BI to figure out what we want to do. So if I just drag a list of names, it will assume that I want to have some kind of a list. And I can see that there's this whole set of visualizations over here in the visualizations column on the latter right third of the screen, where I can choose different ways of looking at information. Maybe I just want a statistic. So if I choose a statistic, it will do its best to try and figure out what I mean. But in this case, let's turn it into a count. So I can actually very quickly make adjustments to the data in order to present different kinds of information. And it will do its best, really, to figure out what it is we mean, no matter which visualization we choose from. So, but obviously, you also see underneath the visualizations that there are a set of columns and fields. It's a little bit wizard-like. We can drag and drop different things onto our surface. So if I want a card, it will put that on the screen. If I click on some more white space, I can put a pie chart. Whatever we need to do, as long as we give it a space on the screen to put it, it will do its best to drag the different pieces we want, and we can just start clicking through our data set in order to fill in any of the blanks. So that's just a really quick and dirty introduction to connecting with Power BI. The big thing I would say about, especially if you are going to start building a lot of reporting, be specific, know the question that you want to ask, and do not over communicate. So, we probably only need in the average dashboard 2 or 3 visualizations to communicate the main points that are relevant to our leadership. Okay, I want to be respectful of time. I know that we're already pretty much a minute over, but I want to open up the line so that everybody can speak. And if you guys have any specific questions or thoughts, we will happily address them while we have a minute or two here. Just unmuting everybody here. Trying to anyway. Huh. Okay, it's a little hard to unmute than I thought it was going to be, but basically I'm just working my way through the list and unmuting everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them at me, and I appreciate your time regardless. Pretty much got everybody unmuted at this point. Okay, so we'll just give it up for another minute or two for anyone who's got any questions. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And like I said, the closing notes on this, we'll be providing recordings of this to everybody. So you'll have a quick snapshot of some of these tips and tricks. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we'll absolutely be inviting everybody to additional sessions. If you want to go into specific details, we'd love to hear from you. So we'll send out a poll to also ask for any insights on things that people feel would be important. All right. If there's no specific questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here then. I'll go ahead and mute everybody back to close it out. And thank you very much for your time today. I hope this has been productive and useful to everybody. I appreciate your attendance, and like I said, we'll reach out with a poll, we'll reach out with questions about anything else that you want to cover specifically where we can go into more detail. Thanks everyone, have a great day. Bye-bye.